When we look here at our question, example 1 says, which day had the greatest high price? And which day had the least low price? So 2 questions. So we're focused on the price of the stock, so we're looking at the top graph. Which day had the greatest high price? So which one of these had the highest price in general? We're looking at the top of these graphs. So the highest price happened right here. What day was that on? That was on May 2nd. So the highest day would be May 2nd. The highest high. Now, which one had the lowest low? Okay, we look here, the low's at the bottom. That would be this day as the lowest low, which is on April 29th. So the answer to part 2 is April 29th. Yes. I mean, that's pretty much what we've done so far. We've had a little bit of formula. And so the formulas are going to be in this too, but it's just a different chart now that we're reading from what it was before. Okay, so here is the next question for us. So between which 2 days did the after-hours trading appear to have the biggest impact on the difference between the closing price and the following day's opening price? So remember we talked about after-hours trading can change the next day's opening price from the previous day's closing price. So when we look here on April 28th, the closing price was about right here. The next day on the 29th, it opened here. Is that a big difference? Not a huge difference, okay? So we see there's a little difference, but it's not big. Let's look between April 29th and April 30th. What about the difference in that day? That's a pretty big jump, a lot bigger than the day before, right? So we could say, hey, there was definitely some after-hours trading going on between the 29th and 30th. Okay, what about between the 30th and the 1st? Not much of a change, if any. And then what about between the 1st and the 2nd? It's a sizable change, okay? So it tells us to pick. Which 2 days did it appear to have the biggest difference? Well, that would be between April 29th and 30th. Will be the biggest change. Right? That was definitely a bigger difference than here. Okay, here's the next one. And this one's really is really going to have a wide range of answers. So we want to know approximately how many shares of the Ford Motor Company were traded over this 5 days. So I'm looking here at, okay, well, how many shares were traded? Now remember, it tells us our Y's are in millions. So once I add all this up, I'm going to put in millions at the end. So on the 28th, about how many shares would you say were traded? Okay, so that's my point. If you pick anything between 175 and 95 million, I'd probably count it right. Right? I mean, it's hard to say for sure. That's why I said there's going to be a big range. So let's say here, I'm going to say that's 180 million. That looks a little bit more than halfway to me. 180 million. On this one, I would say 75 million. So I would do 180 plus 75. This day. So it's a little bit more than 75 million. So I'm going to go with 80 million. Here, looks like we're back down to 75 million. And then here, I'm going to say that's about 90 million. Okay, when I add all those up, I get 500 million. The book added them up and had 460 million. So that's my point. It's not going to be an exact science. If you look at this first one and you say, well, they did 300 million, well, that's going to be wrong, right? Because it's not what it is. You can't just guess crazy. But if you're in the ballpark between the two numbers it should be, I'm going to probably count it right. Because it's not an exact math right there. It's just you reading the chart and getting close. On April 28th, the stock price opened at $8.15. During the day, the stock reached a low price of $8.10. It reached a high price of $8.42. At the close on April 28th, the closing price was $8.21 a share. What I just said out loud would be what I would write down. Just a narrative of you being able to tell what each piece of data here represents. Okay, does that make sense? So what would you say about the 29th? We would say it opened at 8:23. Then what happened? During the day, it fluctuated. It went up and down between a low of whatever and a high of 837. Sounds good. It closed on April 29th at 8:13, 8:12, 8:11, 8:14.
Wait, I thought we were going by, what are we going, are we going by the actual height of the rectangle, or are we going by the little ticks on the side? Cause what about, you got the low by like 8:13.
This is the opening price.
Yeah.
This is the closing price.
Okay.
This is what happened during the day.
Your high and your,
So this is the high and this is the low.
okay.
Does that make sense?
I got you.
That's the only four things we can get from that. Anything else? Okay, so here's the last one. So I don't really want to draw this chart again because, hey, it's not a lot of fun. But you're going to have one question at the very end of your lesson that's going to give you the information and it's going to make you create a table. Okay, so the first 10 questions are you interpreting a table. Then the last one is you making a table. So let's see if we can make a table from this information. I would first look, what's my low price to my high price? So my low is $39.39. My high is $40.65. So I knew I was going to fluctuate between $39 and $41. So I made my Y values go between 39 and 41. Then what would be something easy to count by? Well, since that's such a small increment, I went by quarters in between. So this will be $39.25, $39.50, $39.75, $40. Let's see how we did that. Just fit it to whatever works for your amount of money, your amount of change. And then $40.25, $40.50, $40.75, $41. So now I've made my first chart. So I know it opened at $40.10. So I went between 40 and 40.25, and I put my little opening line. Right? Not rocket science. Now, I knew that the low price was $39.39, so I went above $39.25, below $39.50, and I drew my low price. I knew the high price was $40.65, so I went above $40.50, below $40.75, and I drew my high price. Then I made a little rectangle, colored it in, and then the closing price was $39.79. So I went above $39.75 here, just a little, and I made that be my closing price. Any questions about how I made this chart? Now what about the volume one? Volume one's pretty straightforward, right? I mean, you just interpret it. So if I get rid of 44,500,000 shares, that's how many were traded, then I counted by millions. So this would be 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, 50 million. So 44 million, right between 40 and 50 million. So I went here and I drew my top of my graph and then I colored it in. Any questions about that? So like I told you, dividing this into two parts made today's stuff pretty easy. But there is a lot to interpret, and when you create your own graph, that does take a little bit of time. Because the one I just created, it only had 1 day's worth of data. The one you're creating has 5 days worth of data. Okay? So they wanted me to give you 2 of those to do, but I took one of them out. So what a nice guy I am. So you've only got one, but you got to create 5 different days for that one chart. So it's going to take a little time.